Hundreds of police will descend on the town, both from Germany and Portugal, to begin a 2 to 3 day search for the body of missing Madeleine McCann, who went missing here in May 2007. In the area behind me is where police will start to look for clues where they believe the body of Madeleine McCann was taken.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
So there you have it, up to 100 Portuguese police. So this is a major search, will support German detectives as they begin a new round of detailed searches in this mysterious case of missing Madeleine. That's all happening this week. That's according to the Olive Press. I'll put a link to that in the description. Teams of forensic investigators will scour a hillside, according to this reporter, John Clark. It's specifically the Roja Negra. I actually walked up there just a couple of weeks ago. It sort of towers over the little town of Luge. Now, investigators will spend up to 3 days searching for clues that link Christian Bruckner, 48, to the snatching of Madeleine, 3, on May 3rd. Now, if you're hearing those words, Christian Bruckner, I think you should be either feeling a sinking feeling, or you might be thinking, wow, at last we're going to see some results here. And so this is some kind of effort to do something practical to look for Madeleine in situ. It's actually the fifth time, according to the Olive Press, that police have searched around this small resort, with the Metropolitan Police's Operation Grange first organizing a detailed search in 2014. There have been many searches, most of them, well, all of them really, quite fruitless. I would say the dog search way back in July and August 2007, that was perhaps arguably the most successful search to date. Now, during their searches that year in 2014, they looked at an area close to this week's search, as well as an area called Snail Hill, and also close to the town's church. Snail Hill is kind of, when you look at Luge from above, it kind of looks like a snail shell. It's basically slightly to the west of Luge, and I would also support looking in that area. Now, in 2020, that's just 5 years ago, after German police announced their prime suspect, searches were undertaken by Portuguese police at a series of wells a few miles west of the resort. Now, this makes sense, more sense than searching towards the east, but there are even better and more secure hiding places than the wells in the west. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please hit the thanks button. Bear in mind, I've written a couple of books on the McCann case. My in situ work is documented in Deep Into Darkness and Deeper Into Darkness. I'll put links to those books in the description. And let's get started. Now, this is a surprise. The area being searched this week, this first week of June, has already been pinpointed by 2 South African detectives with a search device that they have patented. Right, again, this is according to the Olive News. In 2008, Dani Krichel worked closely with the McCanns to try and pinpoint where a DNA match to Maddie's body might be in the area. Now, I think that's actually an error. I think Dani Krichel was in the area in, I think it was July 2007. Now, all of this is in the general area of the Roja Negra. You know, if one is close to the hotel, then you can see it to the east. And I'm frankly surprised that some media seem to be treating the Kruchel search intel so seriously after it was dismissed as mere quackery 18 years ago. According to the Olive Press, the 2 detectives revealed they are set to come back to do further investigations imminently. So you're going to have some South African detectives back on the scene. And according to Krichel, who's spoken to the Olive Press, it's likely within the next 90 days, so within the next 3 months. In this analysis, I'll share with you why I believe this search is doomed to fail. I'll also share with you where I believe the search should be concentrated instead. Now, the Sun provides this schematic, basically the general area, and then more specifically the area where the search is likely to be conducted. Now, how I understand the search is, it looks like it's taking place nowhere near Luge. according to the BBC, local media reports the new search will focus on the area between her family's holiday resort and the house where the prime suspect in the German investigation used to live. Now, we know the search for Madeleine was recently given a bunch of additional money. My question is this what it's being spent on? In my opinion, any search to the east of Luge, in other words, towards the Roja Negra, towards the more populated areas, are a waste of time. Instead, the search should be concentrated to the west of Luge. This is based on a triple hypothesis, and I'm going to share now the first two legs of that three-tiered theory. Right. Tier 1. In the first tier, we go back to apartment 5 and we try to establish a pattern. We try to find evidence and follow the evidence, right? And we've got to be careful here, because if one note is off, it ruins the whole symphony. And I do believe accepting that an abductor broke in through the windows, jemmied the shutters, whatever, and took a conscious Madeleine from the room, I believe that is an off note. And further, because a witness who saw the abductor says he doesn't recognize Bruckner, to me that's a serious problem. In Tier 1, if we accept the dog alerts, and that is something we are doing, we're taking a path when we do that. So we need to be certain that that's the right course of action. But if we accept that the dog alerts aren't baseless, and further we see just around the apartment, there seems to be an effort to hide Madeleine, and that effort becomes better with each iteration. We see, she's discovered in the flower bed below the balcony. She's then moved to behind the couch in the lounge, and from there to the best, most secure hiding place in 5A, inside the cupboard of one of the bedrooms. So you can see there's this effort that improves with each iteration, and that's Tier 1. But what it shows is that there isn't just one hiding place, but several temporary ones. That's quite important to know. Now let's go to Tier 2. If we follow the abductor's route, we see that A, it heads downhill towards the sea. Remember, Bruckner's home is uphill and away from the sea. And B, it heads west into the darker, thinner, less populated fabric of Luge. Bruckner's home takes one towards Lagos, a much larger town in a much more dense section of the Algarve. Now, what I haven't showed you until now is where I believe the first temporary storage space could have been after Madeleine was taken from apartment 5A, in other words, the night of May 3rd. It seems likely there was a temporary storage space for two reasons. Number one, alerts were found in the hire car. So how did Madeleine move from apartment 5A to the hire car? It was only hired weeks after Madeleine disappeared, and there were no alerts in the second Ocean Club apartment, I think it was 4G, or in the villa. Well, that's besides Cuddle Cat and some clothing recovered from the same location. So if Madeleine wasn't in the villa, where was she? If Madeleine wasn't in the villa, but she ended up in the vehicle, which later had to be aired, where was she? Number two, which area outside could be used temporarily and is also very close to the road? So close that one could stop there, load the remains and drive off practically without being seen. All of this done very quickly, very easily. Well, the west side does have a road that literally skirts the rocky coastal area for almost a kilometer. I've run along there, I've walked along there. It really is right there on the road. So do you see it's this storage drain, immediately where the dog walking and jogging route commences. It's less than a minute from Kelly's Bar and less than a minute from the Smith siding. In other words, it's right there by Kelly's Bar, right there by the Smith siding, and it overlooks the rocky west section. At night, it's very dark. Even with the improved lighting, it's a very dark area. And since it's a drain, any odors coming from there could be mistaken for sewage. If one enters the drain just a few feet, it tilts upward, and in this space, the remains could be hidden out of view even if one shone a flashlight into them. There are also additional possibilities, but these seem riskier and more obvious, such as, and this is right by that storm drain, inside the thick reeds. It's like a wall of thick reeds, and then also under some of the fishing boats that are lying nearby as well. I'm not going to take it further than that, but in the next analysis, I'll share where I think Madeleine's final resting place could be. In this analysis, we've dealt with a possible temporary resting place. We'll deal with a possible final resting place and where search efforts, in my opinion, ought to be focused. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.